And so it begins another year of the madness of March, and our Mountaineers look as if they're in a good place. I'm Carson Fox for Fox on West Virginia Mountaineers Sports, and as you can see, we have another setup here. Completed my move last week and still kind of under construction in this room, so bear with me as I get used to my new setup here and my home studio. So if you want to even call it that. But let's talk about this men's basketball team. We'll talk about the end of the regular season, where the Mountaineers are slotted for the Big 12 tournament, which starts whenever this video releases. It'll be today. Throughout the rest of the weekend, where the Mountaineers are primed to finish for the NCAA tournament potentially. I'll talk about some of the Big 12's conference player of the year, coach of the year, first team, second team, third team, defensive player of the year awards, where you see for this 2024-25 season, expectations achieved already. Will there have a sour taste in your mouth if West Virginia doesn't win in Kansas City, doesn't win in the NCAA tournament? And then kind of like, what are your expectations for, and like how you feel about the program for moving forward? Because as we know, as always on this program, we're always forward thinking. We're always trying to see what's next at stake. Sometimes get a little ahead of ourselves and not necessarily enjoying the moment of where we are at, but we'll break it all down for you. So the last 3 games for the month of March in the regular season for the Mountaineers went 2-1, won the 2 games you necessarily should have needed to win, that being last Tuesday against the Utah Utes, 71-69, and then this past Saturday on Senior Day, 72-65. Did have, an opportunity to really, I would say, win a game that would be like that, prove it in the tournament, make some noise on the road at Provo, Utah, against the BYU Cougars, who are number 25 in the nation, ended up losing by 21 in an effort that was just really, really poor offensively, especially in the first half, only scoring 19 points. I was rather disappointed. I'll be honest with you. I was expecting a better showing out of the Mountaineers, coming off a hot performance the Tuesday prior against TCU, winning that game convincingly. Thought they could take it on the road, feel motivated for that last 3-game stretch. But, you lose that game against a opponent that you lost to in the final 30 seconds at home in Morgantown in the month of February. And then they go on the road against Utah, really control that game all the way down to the final wire. And just you're up 6, and you have this boneheaded play. Unfortunately, I think one of the worst plays that I've seen that was, I feel like, shooting yourselves in the foot, unfortunately, by Jonathan Powell, throwing it to the inbounding defender against Javon Small, who was inbounding the ball. Powell trips over his own 2 feet, throws it across, wanting to get the Small, instead right into the hands of the Utah defender, who lays it in for an easy deuce. And now, it comes down to the final wire after a Sincere Harris missed free throw for Utah to potentially pull off, a miracle 99.9% chance of winning that game for West Virginia, and they hit that 0.1 chance with, up or down 6 with 5 seconds left to play. Thankfully, Joe Yesufu blocked the Gabe Madsen final 3 at the buzzer. Didn't even really have a chance. And West Virginia walked out victoriously. And then maybe the most frustrating game in a victory, and I know West Virginia's had a few so far this season, was this past Saturday at Coliseum. Way too close for comfort. Up 47-25 at the half. Absolutely raining threes. Javon Small was playing like his head was on fire. West Virginia, that was the best first half scoring output that I'd seen all season. Just looked fantastic, and then the first 10 minutes of the second half were just absolutely abysmal, and you only pull it out by 7. 5-point game there in the last few minutes. Thank goodness for Javon Small and his scoring output on the day, but just not the way that you feel real confident, or any more confident than you have been for probably the last 5 weeks with this team. Since West Virginia won, let me get to it. The game we all remember, January 18th, Saturday home game against number 2 Iowa State. West Virginia has yet to beat a ranked opponent and has lost to Arizona State that it's better than in the rankings, Kansas State who it's better than in the rankings, TCU on the road. Baylor is the 7 seed, so can't count them in. And so those are your losses that you've had while not having beat a ranked opponent. So the resume really pretty much secure definitely for the regular season with those wins against Gonzaga early in the season, at Kansas, the home game against Iowa State. You can also talk about the matchup in the Bahamas that is like escaping me, so I got to go back to it. Against Arizona, conference opponent in overtime, and also beating Georgetown, a Big East team. So, West Virginia's put together its resume can only, I feel like, increase its chances while still feeling comfortably in, according to ESPN, Joe's Lenardi, lock to make the tournament, fluctuating by different prognosticators, brackets, projections, anywhere from about an 8 to 10 seed. And I would think if West Virginia falls in its first round matchup, either against TCU or Colorado in the Big 12 tournament, they're going to get as low of a seed as possible, which, I don't think I've seen anywhere that's lower than a 10. So you'd get a 7-10 matchup playing a 2. Or if West Virginia ends up, let's say, making some noise, I'm thinking somehow, some way getting to a Big 12 conference or tournament championship game, they may play their way up to a 7. I've seen crazier things can happen, especially if West Virginia can pick up another ranked win, being the 8th seed of this tournament. If it were to go and beat a number 1 Houston in Kansas City, and then coming back, and then you're ending up playing who's the 4th in this tournament, BYU, or a 5 team in Iowa State, both teams who have been ranked for most of this season, or BYU at least in the later portions of this season. Wow, that could be something I feel like that West Virginia could play all of its way up to a 7 seed. But as of right now, the way things have gone for really the solid last 2 months, I feel like West Virginia is kind of is who they have been in this post Tucker DeVries. I would say that mid-January, once we knew that the chances for Tucker DeVries to come back for this season, the likelihood was pretty much slim to none, and Slim left town alongside with Jaden Stone, even though he's still on the official roster, has the potential to come back next season. Don't know anything more than what we've learned publicly through the social media accounts, or what Darren DeVries has announced for this season. That West Virginia mediocre in conference play, 10-10 record. They're outside the top 25, still I would say around a top 50 team in the country, or 50, anywhere between 50 and 60. But here's what I'll say, because I feel as if I'm almost 10 minutes into this and sounding a little bit negative. I am so proud of where this team is at this point in time, and I think many in Mountaineer Nation agree with me. I go back to my record of what I said about this team in November. Taking a look at kind of like the preview show, looking at the totality of the season with all of the roster flux, whole new coaching staff, replacing a legend in Bob Huggins. I know we had the interim year of Josh Eilert, but a new chapter of the program. And West Virginia comes out here and wins 19 games for the season. I was saying if West Virginia could win 17, if they went 17-14, and this was still considering Tucker DeVries being on the team and Jaden Stone, going 17-14, and win 40% of its games in Big 12 play. Maybe I set the bar a little too low, but to come out there, win 2 more overall, and go 50% in conference play, I chalk this up as a win. I chalk this up as success, beating Gonzaga for all of the battles you've had against the Bulldogs over the years, and to beat them in the Bahamas. I know they ended up not being as good as a team that was a top 10 team in the country this season, But to beat them in the Bahamas, first time, since they played in that 2017 game in the NCAA tournament that you would have loved to have a victory for Javon Carter, or was that the regular season matchup? But to beat Gonzaga, to go on the road and do something that Bob Huggins' teams for West Virginia had never done before, and go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse, win on the road at Kansas. I know Kansas wasn't the juggernaut like, say, Houston was this season and being throughout the top 10 for the entire season. But to win on the road in that New Year's Eve game, that was a huge accomplishment. And then coming home against a number 2 team in the country in a prove it to me kind of game, an electric atmosphere, you can't take away that Iowa State game. So who, it's proven, they're top 5 in this conference, and they've been in the top 15 all season long, fluctuating in the top 20. So 3 big wins to West Virginia's credit, getting to 19 total. If they can win one more, that's, I feel like, a benchmark item of old. That when I always tried to judge the Mountaineer teams of old, how many times did you get to 20 wins? How many did you get to 25 in a season? How many NCAA tournament games did you win? Big 12 tournament championships, et cetera, et cetera. That's what you stack as part of your resume when you're looking at the pedigree of a program, and for a head coach in Darian DeVries, that's how you will be evaluated on against other opponents, and other programs across the country. How many players are you sending to the NBA? How many are you putting on all conference championship lists? I know that the NIL factor is something that's always going to be talked about now as part of college sports, but you get what I'm saying is if you want to show that you're a legit program, this in college basketball, these are the types of things you need to do. Win 20 games. You need to finish in the top 4 or be a conference contender. Make some noise in your conference tournament. Prove that you can belong, and that's what I think West Virginia is taking those steps of becoming or reclaiming their place in the Big 12 conference as a program that needs to be feared and that needs to be counted on as one of your stalwart programs. And that was something that I was kind of, if you followed my channel since the beginning, I was kind of worried about or concerned about, at the end of the 2023 football season, and especially when everything happened with Bob Huggins and his ousting as head coach, I just wondered. I wondered what would the investment financially, emotionally, the fan attachment, everything still be into this basketball program when it seemed as if as the football program was on the upswing, that the climb was starting to finally become realized. And it just goes to show that basketball, West Virginia cares, fans and boosters alike, investing the money. It seems like Ren Baker has had a home run hire in Darren DeVries since bringing him over. I mean, to do what he has done, flipping this roster completely over with no one from last year's team return. Considering Ofri Neve took a red shirt, to have no one from last year's team, completely building the roster himself, evaluating all of the players, training them up, getting them into their roles, and putting together this kind of a season when your second and third scorers, knowing what Javon Small has done, and Tucker DeVries and what would have been Jaden Stone, who did not, Tucker didn't play more than 75% of the season, or 25% of the season, was out for 75% of the season, and then Jaden Stone didn't play a game. To get to this point and get higher than what I was already expecting, got to give this team an A as an evaluation for this 2024-25 season. And that is why, and tweeted some people about this because it seemed like the topic was coming up on across social media from some Mountaineer people out on Twitter, saying that I definitely do think Darren DeVries is worthy of a raise. If you want to extend him, traditionally with an addition of years, fine, go ahead and do it. I think to match where the coach that he keeps being compared to because of the job rumors and Fran McCaffrey at Iowa, to pay him around $3.4 million, that would be $500,000 more than what he would be paid for next season, making $2.8 million this year, make 2.9, instead make 3.4, and then $100,000 ascending from here on out. That puts him just outside, I feel like, the top 25 of coaches in college basketball. So this is kind of something I feel like I live by when I argue sports is, paying for future results rather than past accomplishments. Sometimes programs, and pro sports or college sports can get in trouble with that. Sometimes when you're overpaying for those past performances in a veteran player, veteran coach, and instead of what you think they are going to do. So what Darren DeVries and his staff have already been able to do on the recruiting front, and in addition to what they've done on the court this season and what they have coming back for next season. If the NIL dollars are still there, which unfortunately always it seems like has to be the leading argument in these kinds of cases when talking about today's world of college sports, if you can pay Darren DeVries around top 25 money, have that investment still in NIL dollars, I think Darren DeVries is ready to take off in college basketball. I think he's ready to make a name for himself, kind of land in Morgantown, try and make this his a Big 12 power in basketball, because it's just going to be tougher. It's just going to be tougher, and I hear this argument from different West Virginia content creators from time to time. Is it easier to win a championship in football versus basketball? It is so hard in football. For a program that for over 125 years has taken shots, having its best chances in 1988, 89, 93, and then 2007, and has come up empty, unfortunately. And then, there's the changing world of ESPN, SEC money, Fox Sports, Big Ten money, and I don't want this to derail into this, but maybe, just maybe, that it is potentially easier to win a national championship in basketball. So if this is the guy to do it, if he has the full-fledged support of the boosters, I think definitely from the administration and Ren Baker, and if things can be turned around financially at West Virginia University with a new president, new vision coming in, there's a lot of momentum right now, it feels like, especially on the football front with what's coming in. So if football and basketball can kind of rise together harmoniously, we might be talking about, I feel like, a resurgence of the athletic program to kind of put these later 2010s, early 2020 years behind us and turn the page into the next decade, and then see what happens, years down the road, potentially when we're talking about, the prophesied Super League. So with that being said, what are my expectations, or what are my hopes for this Big 12 tournament? I think just continue to try and make it rain as best you can, like in that UCF game. It's really going to take, I feel like, outstanding shooting for the Mountaineers to win some ball games against opponents that are of comparable talent or better. You saw, and that was my criticism about the February recap, is if West Virginia can hit shots, but then also can it defend for 40 minutes, especially during those times when the shots just aren't falling, to not get frustrated or to not just take off mentally take off a possession, or to give up easy baskets, because that can unfortunately sometimes lead into runs, and we know that basketball is a game of runs, and then let opponents walk right back into the game with you. So I fully expect West Virginia to beat either of its two potential second round opponents, or first game opponents, in either TCU or Colorado. I know West Virginia won the one game series against Colorado this season. That was early on in conference play, and then against TCU split the series. Arguably had one of its worst shooting performances, especially out of its trio in Yesufu, Powell, and Hansbury in early February at TCU. Then came back, rebounded well just before the end of February at home against TCU. So if it is the Horned Frogs for a third time this season, they will give West Virginia all they can, trying to play spoiler. It doesn't seem like Jamie Dixon and his program will be heading to the NCAA tournament, just didn't do enough during the regular season. So they're going to give West Virginia an 8-9 matchup all they want. Fortunate that that's got to be a 3 p.m. in the afternoon game when a lot of people are still at work. And then if West Virginia wins that contest, then they have to play Houston in a game that also tips off midday on Thursday. So kind of just unfortunate the way the schedule plays out with West Virginia having to play during the day. I do not like that matchup at all with Houston. They're just too big, too physical, too defensive, and just have the size that does not match up well at all with West Virginia. So I think West Virginia can be one win and done if they go further, if they beat Houston. I mean, crazier things have happened, and wars have been fought against greater odds and won before Jon Snow. So West Virginia could go on a run here. I just think it's highly unlikely. And then we'll see what West Virginia's matchup is, and we'll talk about that their NCAA tournament draw once the brackets release after next Sunday, or this upcoming Sunday. So also just kind of wanted to weigh in. A lot of consternation also out there on the social medias about Javon Small not being picked as the all Big 12 player of the year. What I will have to say is, and you're never going to get in me someone who's going to defend the Big 12. Absolutely, positively not, because I'm with you in that throughout the years, over a decade now, it just seems as if West Virginia has been this eastern outpost on the frontier, that this Midwestern, now, Great Plains, Rocky Mountains conference has just completely forgotten about, overshadowed, overlooked, never thought about. I mean, they don't even put the times in Eastern, like Eastern Standard Time. For now 2 programs, and 3 programs, Cincinnati, UCF, and West Virginia, they're all in the Eastern time zone. That's how much of an afterthought West Virginia is. But in this regard, because the Big 12 Player of the Year is voted on by the coaches, that's why I can't necessarily argue or hate on the Big 12 as much, because it was the coaches who picked the award winner. I think it really did come down to a JT Toppin and a Javon Small. 18 points per game for Toppin, 18 points per game. I know, decibel factors in there with Javon Small. But 14 double-doubles for Toppin for the year, almost averaging a double-double with 18 points and 9 rebounds. I mean, he had some games in the 40s and the 30s. And Texas Tech is, the number 2 team in the conference. Top 10 program right now, for the top 10 team at least for this season. And I think that's kind of where, if you want to take the argument of having the best statistics for the year, I mean, at least in terms of scoring, you would go Javon Small in this case. Best player on best team, you're going to go with Houston. They had some guys who I feel like all could argue with that. So where I would say is if it wasn't necessarily player of the year and most valuable, I think I've talked about this before on a past show and years prior. Most valuable, very loaded term, very subjective. So, but I would say most definitely, if it was truly defined by most valuable for his team, Javon Small deserves this award, no doubt. West Virginia would be in the toilet if Javon Small weren't on this team, or suffered some sort of injury, traumatic injury to the extent like Tucker DeVries did, or Jaden Stone did. Nobody, I saw some, there was a great Twitter account. I think I retweeted 2 of their graphs in the last couple of days. One today, Evan Miyakawa on Twitter, at Evan Miya, if I'm mispronouncing that name. And he put out a graphic that said production missing per game due to injuries for top 100 teams. West Virginia had the highest production for the most missed production of any team in the top 100. Louisville being second, then also Arizona State, TCU, and Northwestern. All are part of that top 5, but at the highest, above every other program on this graphic, is West Virginia. So it just goes to show nobody did more with less because of those 2 catastrophic injuries for this team's potential for this season in Darian DeVries and the Mountaineers. And it's all because of Javon Small, sorry. Same first name there. But I think he will kind of be put up there in that pantheon of the last 10 years worth. Wow, it's almost crazy to think that Javon Carter has been out of Mountaineer basketball for almost a decade now, or at least half decade. I think right up there with the importance of how important Javon Carter was to those Mountaineer teams. Javon Small, same kind of extent. And I don't know if you would make the case as if, Tucker was back, would he have the volume? Would he have the same kind of opportunity that he has to score? Or would, by adding Tucker, mutualistically help Small to be able to score, take the pressure off him, not feel so double teamed every game? Would they both be able to eat, is what I'm trying to say at the end of the day? Or because Tucker's not on the floor, everything can go through Small. I think I noted the stat at the end of February, he was second among Power 5 players from Power 5 teams in minutes. I think he's been jumped in that regard, but I mean, we're all talking about just like a decimal point of an average minutes per game. Plays 36 minutes per game, still is one of the top 40 free throw shooters in by percentage in the country, and also the highest scorer in the Big 12. So love what he can do if he takes those shots and he's hitting them with frequency, if he's able to inspire his team, get them motivated, because it's very streaky with this Mountaineer team. When they get hot, it's how it happens on the offensive side is how then it can bounce back on the defensive side, that they can get stops, use transition baskets to score some easy points. And sometimes when this team just kind of gets caught up in the half-court game, finding an open guy and he misses an open three, that just makes me want to just bang my head against the wall. So West Virginia got to be better down this home stretch in the Big 12 tournament and in March Madness to hit those open looks from three. But I mean, Small, he's able to do it from both the mid-range game, driving the basketball, and shooting from three. So keep running your offense through him, and then hopefully West Virginia gets a matchup in that NCAA tournament against the team that really on 3-4 days notice can't prepare as well for him. So, kudos to JT Toppin for winning the award. Again, it's decided upon by the coaches. So if you want to be arguing with anybody, you're arguing with guys who make millions of dollars, who have won national titles and other accolades for basketball acumen. But I can understand the consternation. Happy to see him a part of the 10-man and first team for the Big 12. So I don't know how you get 10 guys on a first team and then only 5 on the second and 5 on the third, respectively. But nice to see him get that honor. Also to see Sincere Harris being named on the all-defensive team. Love what he's able to bring whenever he doesn't have stupid fouls, like he had many of them in that UCF game on this past Saturday. So just kind of looking down the line, a lot to be excited for as a Mountaineer fan of getting back to the NCAA tournament. It seems like it's been 20 years, even though it's just been a few, especially when your arch rival in Pitt is not going to be making the NCAA tournament. So that's awesome. I only have made it one time in the last 7 seasons under head coach Jeff Capel. So we'll have that against the Pitt fans to enjoy, that West Virginia will be in the NCAA tournament and Pitt will not. So hope you all are able to enjoy this Big 12 tournament run. We'll be back at action next week for the NCAA tournament, and I'll love to be bringing you a preview show for that game, at least for West Virginia's first matchup, to talk about that game. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Love to know your thoughts. Leave your comments here on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. Love to have you subscribers. My channel, going to talk some Mountaineer baseball very soon. And also, we're right in the thick of it, I feel like, 7 practices in. Got still a few weeks left of Mountaineer football. I have been tuning in to all of the Rich Rodriguez press conferences. It seems like he does a press conference after every practice. I would go crazy if I had to do that if I was a coach, but it seems like he likes it. So I've been picking up some things here and there, some nuggets of information, details that Rodriguez is saying during those press conferences, and I have some thoughts. So I'll be talking about football with you, at least spring football, later in the month of March, leading up to the spring showcase on April 5th. So Really excited for it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia. Let's go.